Hello, this is Joseph Holbrook. Today we're going to be talking about society and the sacred. This is about how the sacred and the social interact with one another. What is the effect of religion on society, and what is the effect of society on religion? So let us begin. In the relationship between religion and society, Gary Swanson, in The Birth of the Gods, puts forward the idea that the sacred, or at least in terms of institutional religion, is often a reflection of the type of society that it's formed in. One obvious example of this would be Roman Catholicism, which emerged and took shape and was formed within the context of the Roman Empire, and actually became predominant as the Roman Empire was collapsing. Also, another example might be Hinduism and the caste system in India. Karl Marx is another scholar who viewed religion as a secondary factor, not a primary factor. He kind of dismissed it, called it an epiphenomenon. Emile Durkheim was a sociologist of religion who did extensive research in Australia among Aboriginal tribes and studied totemism. I've already mentioned the Roman Catholic Church. Islam also was greatly influenced by the patriarchal Arabic culture of the 8th and 9th centuries. Max Weber is an important classic figure in the sociology of religion. He is the one that came up with the famous thesis of the spirit of capitalism, the Protestant work ethic in the spirit of capitalism. And Max Weber was trying to modify Karl Marx's view that everything boiled down to class struggle and economics, and Max Weber made more room for the individual and studied the role of ideas, especially religious ideas, in influencing the economy as well as the society. He did, in his sociology of religion, he studied China, India, and ancient Israel. And he saw the economic behavior and the value structures being interrelated. And here's a picture of Emile Durkheim in his classic book, The Elementary of Religious Life. Max Weber, this is a classic book by Girth and Mills on Max Weber's essays in sociology. So Weber said that ideas are rooted in material and social conditions, yet these beliefs are not static. They're embodied in human persons. People participate in the process of social change. And so he studied different types of religious leaders, which he designated as prophets, sages, saints. He talked about religious reformers, which often bring new aspects of truth and reality to society as well as to the religious sphere. While remaining at one level continuous with their social world, they introduce something radically new. And this he called charisma. Charisma is kind of an intangible quality in great leaders who influence multitudes of people to follow them, sometimes for good, sometimes not for good, for evil. For example, it's widely acknowledged that Fidel Castro started to say was a charismatic leader, as was Adolf Hitler. The great 8th and 9th century before the Common Era prophets of Israel were Isaiah, Jeremiah, Micah, and Amos. They were prophetic reformers, or ethical prophets, according to Max Weber. Jesus within Judaism was also a reformer of the 1st century of the Common Era. Some people argue that Jesus never intended to start a religion, that he was attempting to reform Judaism rather than start a new religion. Gautama Buddha also was a reformer of Hinduism in the 6th century before Christ, or before the Common Era. Muhammad, the Prophet Muhammad in the Arab culture in the 6th century, would be a great example of an ethical prophet. Martin Luther and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. were both reformers and charismatic leaders as well. The dynamic and interdependent relationship between society and religion means that religion often can serve society in a functional way and in a number of ways that will conserve the traditional social structure, and in other ways it can bring about radical change or even revolution. So it can work either way. It can be a conservative force or a reforming or revolutionary force. Religion can operate both ways. Types of religious communities that we will look at in this particular chapter are natural religious communities, national religions, secret societies, voluntary and founded religions. And among the natural religious communities, we have examples in Roman Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy. In terms of national religions, we could point to Japanese state Shinto. And in several centuries ago, we might have been able to point to Confucianism in China as well. We'll give a few examples of secret societies that often exist within larger religions. Voluntary religious communities are what most of us think of as evangelical or Protestant churches, where people who go there by their choice. They're not born into the church. They may go around visiting churches till they find one that they like and they join it. And then founded religions, sometimes this overlaps because both Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy are natural religious communities, but they also had founders, namely Jesus Christ and St. Paul. Voluntary religious communities, such as Baptists, are also founded religions in the sense that they trace themselves back to Christ and St. Paul. So some of these categories overlap slightly. Natural religious communities, there's a difference between these communities and founded or voluntary religious groups. Some of the characteristics are that in natural religious communities, there's little differentiation between the religious and the social cultural life of the community. You might see this in Greece. If you were to visit Greece, you would see that Greek society and Greek Orthodoxy are very much hand in glove. Did you see the movie My Fat Little Greek Wedding? Is that what it's called? My Greek, I can't remember the title, but I think you know what I'm talking about. It's a funny movie about a Greek family whose daughter's getting married, and if you saw that film, you saw how pervasive and overpowering Greek Orthodoxy was, the Greek religion, in terms of the society and the family life. My Fat Little Greek Wedding, I think it's called. Anyway, I'm not getting it right, but you know what I mean. Natural religious groups are joined by biological and blood relations, kinship, clan and tribe, geography, region, nation, or culture. In other words, you're born into the natural religious groups and you're expected to marry within the group. Conservative or Orthodox Judaism could fall into this category, although Reformed Judaism is a little bit looser in terms of allowing their children to marry non-Jews. But there was a time if you were a Roman Catholic, you were expected to marry a Roman Catholic. If you were Greek Orthodox, you had to marry someone who was Greek Orthodox, or they had to convert to Greek Orthodoxy. The same is true of Orthodox Judaism. Founded religious communities, on the other hand, are dependent on the unique authority of a charismatic leader and on his or her teachings or ideology. Some example of founded religions would include early Christianity, Buddhism, Islam, and Mormonism, which was founded by Joseph Smith and then later led by Brigham Young. National religious communities, we have a great example in Japanese Shinto, which is uniquely a national religious community with regards to the emperor, who's considered as a direct descendant of the sun goddess. There is an imperative to marry within the clan. Ancestor veneration is often extremely important in national religious communities. This was also true of Confucianism in China in the medieval period. Caste Hinduism as well is a national religious community, and ancestor veneration is pretty important. The king often serves as God's representative. You see this in ancient Rome, for example, where offering a sacrifice to Caesar was like taking the oath of allegiance, or the Pledge of Allegiance in the United States. It was an act of loyalty to the state. National religions often trace the nation and its people back to a sacred origin. even as descendants of the gods, and view the king or the emperor as a representative or incarnation of the deity itself. Perfect symmetry between the divine cosmic order and the political order is seen in these communities. This type of national religion was dominant in the ancient Near East, for example in Egypt, Babylonia, and Assyria. We'll be studying those three examples when we get to chapter, I believe it's chapter 8 on cosmogony. In Japanese state Shinto, Jimmu Tenno was considered to be the first human emperor. He was the son of the sun goddess Amaterasu. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, Amaterasu or Amaterasu. He lived in Honshu in 600 BC. There was a political restoration by the Emperor Meiji in 1868. In 1890, by imperial decree, they began to insist on modern education, and Shinto thus emerged from the Meiji period as a cult of nationalistic patriotism. Here are some Shinto priests and a Shinto shrine. The secret society exists within the larger religious community, such as natural, national, or universal religions. An example would be the mystery cults of ancient Greece and Rome. Eleusinian, Orphic, Dionysian were three of the mystery cults. Secret fraternities were common among the North American Indians, in West African tribal communities, and in Melanesia and Polynesia. Opus Dei is an organization that has been a semi-secretive society within Catholicism since about the late 1940s. It means the work of God. Voluntary religious communities has distinct features. That one example of a voluntary religious community would be a Baptist church or a Christ Fellowship here in Miami, El Rey Jesus, Vineyard. These are all voluntary religious communities. First, there's at least a partial break with natural ties. Social relationships that were essential to the natural religious community may also lose their hold. Marriage within the group, for example, may no longer be quite so important. What is important is the union with another person who is committed to the same spiritual doctrine or experience. So if you're a Baptist and you're single, you'd be encouraged to date other Baptists. Chastity and vows of celibacy may be considered the highest spiritual ideal within a voluntary religious community. That of a priest, monk, or nun, as in the case of Roman Catholicism or Theravada Buddhism. In voluntary religions, ancestor rites may also play little or no role. Buddhist monks, for example, severs their ties with their family and friends in order to enter into a Buddhist monastery. Jesus said that mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, and yes, even his own life, if someone who wanted to be a disciple would hold on and choose their mother, wife, and children over Jesus, they could not be his disciple in Luke 14. So that you had to be willing to sacrifice family ties in order to be a follower of Jesus. It is often remarked how Islam's radical monotheism transcends ethnic, racial, and national boundaries. Max Weber's concept of charisma indicates that charismatic leaders and reformers are very important in the influence of religion as well as society. The commitment to the founder may demand a sharp break with the natural communities, as we've already seen. It is this severing of kinship bonds and the claim of doctrine over blood that Max Weber considers the achievement of the great universal ethical religions. On the death of the founder, the future of the spiritual fellowship rests on its message and organization rather than on the leader's charisma. And I'm going to skip over the routinization of charisma. This is basically how each religion begins to have to structure itself after the leader is gone. Types of religious communities include the ecclesia, the Buddhist sangha, the Muslim ummah, the Hindu caste, or the Hindu ashram. This is a picture of Gandhi's ashram, and the Confucian family. Protest and change in voluntary religious communities. We're going to see an example of this in the film Luther, and we'll discuss it after we see the film. Reform often is a very important part, and many groups spin off from reform movements. We will also be talking about monasticism and small groups and church, sect, and cult. We'll talk about the aspect